Year-old man sentenced to 12 years in prison for domestic abuse offences. Convicted paedophile Charles Montegrifo could be stripped of his MBE following his 14-year prison sentence. Government exploring the possibility of creating a park and ride facility on the Spanish side. And the King's Baton lands on the Rock as part of the build-up to the Commonwealth Games. Good evening. At the Supreme Court, a local man has been sentenced to 12 years in prison for multiple offences. They relate to incidents that took place between 2023 and 2024. 35-year-old Richard Vallarino was found guilty of rape, controlling and coercive behaviour, assault occasioning actual bodily harm and assault by penetration. Mr Justice Liam Yates said the sentences for rape, assault by penetration and ABH would be served consecutively, while the sentence for controlling and coercive behaviour would be served concurrently. Justice Yates said he would not quote from the victim's personal statement, but accepted the offences had had a serious effect on the victim. An application by the Crown for a sexual offences prevention order will be considered at a later date. Convicted paedophile Charles Montegrifo could be stripped of his MBE. The 90-year-old was sentenced to 14 years in prison last month after pleading guilty to a number of historic child sex offences. In answer to GBC questions, a spokesperson from the convent said the governor has referred the case to the Honours Secretariat to consider the forfeiture of his MBE in line with existing processes.
The Honours Forfeiture Committee considers whether recipients have brought the honours system into disrepute. Cases are typically reviewed following criminal convictions, professional misconduct findings, or behaviour considered incompatible with retaining an honour. Recommendations are ultimately made to the King through the Prime Minister. A number of high-profile figures have previously had honours revoked following criminal convictions or public scandal. Broadcaster Stuart Hall lost his OBE after being convicted of child sex offences, while entertainer Rolf Harris was stripped of his CBE following convictions for indecent assault. More recently, former Post Office boss Paula Venables lost her CBE over the Horizon scandal. The forfeiture of honours is relatively rare and assessed on a case-by-case basis. When asked for comment on Charles Montegrifo, Minister for Justice Nigel Feetham told GBC he should absolutely be stripped of the award. He added that retaining the honour would bring the award system into disrepute and that the harm suffered by the victims demands accountability.
Labour has suffered heavy losses in local elections across England, with Reform UK emerging as the biggest winner. Latest figures show Labour has lost 900 council seats and control of authorities including Hartlepool, Tameside, Redditch and Tamworth. Reform UK, led by Nigel Farage, has gained over 1,000 seats, sweeping through traditional Labour heartlands. Speaking in West London this morning, Sir Keir Starmer accepted responsibility, describing the results as tough, but insisting he would lead Labour into the next general election. Some Labour MPs have called on him to step down. The results carry weight for Gibraltar. Chief Minister Fabian Picardo and Sir Keir have known each other since their days as young lawyers, and it was Sir Keir's Labour government that concluded the UK-EU treaty agreement on Gibraltar last June.
I'm not going to walk away and plunge the country into chaos. I think it's very important that we don't sugarcoat these results, so I'm not going to do that. They are tough results, I accept that. They reflect voters who don't feel that their lives have changed enough or quickly enough, and that's been going on for a long time. We were elected to deal with that. It was a 5-year term I was elected to do. I intend to see that through.
The government is exploring the possibility of creating a park and ride facility on the Spanish side of the frontier. Minister for Transport John Cortés revealed that discussions are ongoing during last night's Viewpoint programme on travel and tourism. Following criticism from GST MPs Damon Bocino and Giovanni Origo, who said infrastructure plans should already have been in place, Tourism Minister Christian Santos said the government could only move forward once the treaty came into play.
We don't know exactly what the impact's going to be. People are saying there's going to be more traffic flowing in. It's quite likely that that will be the case. And what we're working with now with our colleagues on both sides of the border is discouraging vehicles from coming in to Gibraltar. We're looking at the possibility of a park and ride. It follows a treaty. There's cooperation with our neighbours in
Is it where
Dalinia.
it was originally going to be at the entrance
that is still
to Devil's Tower
under
Road?
discussion.
Right.
It need not necessarily be on this side of the border. And these are discussions that are going on. Obviously, we have to enhance public transport, and we're looking at changing the location of our bus stops. This is something that we're working on now with a view to having in place as soon as possible.
John, you are also, I'm afraid to say, incapable of answering a very fundamental basic question which has been raised by Ros in relation to what is going to happen when we have a free-flowing frontier, indeed no border. That is a failure on the part of this government. And you should be, with the greatest of respect, in a better position when on the 15th of July this thing happens, to be able to hit the ground running.
Damon clearly doesn't have all the information, but it is not possible to make firm plans until you know what's going to happen. We have plans which are being developed, and they will be public in due course, and not so long from now, which will reconfigure the traffic at the border. So we have a very strong technical team working on it.
Important to point out how shocking I think the first few words that came out the minister's mouth was in response to your answer when you asked what will the government be doing to managing increase in traffic, and he said something to the effect of, well, we don't really know at this stage what the impact's going to be. And you think, having been working towards this, having the professionals at hand and people to carry these assessments, you'd have some idea of what kind of impact the flow at the border is going to take. The minister then says that they're considering relocating bus stops and maybe changing how we come in through the frontier, but there's only one way to come into Gibraltar, which is through the Kingsway Tunnel. So the bottleneck isn't going to go anywhere.
There was a lot of work at the same time. As much as we knew that the treaty and how it was going to look, we had to plan for an NNO. We had to plan for a no-deal scenario. So a lot of work went into that, as well as a lot of work going into what was going to happen with the treaty. And now we're actively putting into practice the plans that were made when the treaty was going to come into play.
In what was a lively debate, Damon Bossino and Giovanni Origo accused the government of having a disjointed tourism and travel strategy. However, Christian Santos rejected this, highlighting that tourism numbers are up. As regards cycling, John Cortes confirmed cycle lanes were being boosted at the frontier and other areas around Gibraltar.
OK, so the newer arrangement for the frontier will include a two-way cycle lane right the way across the runway. Obviously, there's the alternative through the tunnel, right the way straight to the frontier without having to loop where the loop is now. So that's going to be an improvement. We are extending cycling infrastructure, as you know, around Chatham, and we are taking steps to improve facilities for cycling in the Waterport area. The South District will be done once the sewage transfer system is done. No, that's the particular one on Transport Road, which I had a meeting today, and that will now be completed by the 18th of May. Yeah. They were delayed. They say there were rocks that it... Anyway, that's contractors' issues. But we can't do that cycling extension until the sewage stream. Okay. Once the sewage is put in,
are you talking
it'll
about
come
a
back.
lane, a South District lane?
A cycling lane along to the south. Okay. So that's happening.
And you can catch up with last night's Viewpoint programme on Sunday at 9 or online at gbc.gi. The Ministry of Transport has clarified the government's position on cycling, saying it's not backtracking on its policy. This follows a GBC interview with a senior ministry official earlier this week, where the government confirmed other modes of transport will now take the same position as bicycles in the sustainable travel hierarchy when it comes to decision-making on the roads. The Transport Ministry says pedestrians remain the top priority and environmentally, cycling remains second. The government adds it's not a question of hierarchy, but that the interests of all road users have to be considered, especially in a place with narrow roads and few alternative routes, in order to ensure a balanced and practical approach across all users of the road network. The GST says photographs published alongside the announcement of a heritage survey highlight the extent to which historical sites have been left to deteriorate.
The opposition welcomes the government's heritage survey but says the assets deserve preservation out of respect for those who built and manned them and for their potential contribution to Gibraltar's tourist offering, particularly in the context of the treaty. Shadow Minister Damon Bocino called on the Ministry for Heritage to update the public on the condition of the 9.2-inch gun at Europa Point, which he said remained exposed to the elements and in a state of disrepair. Mr. Bocino said the government appeared intent on leaving significant pieces of military heritage in poor condition, despite what he called spin to the contrary.
You're watching GBC News. Still to come, measures being put in place to ensure macaques are not fed illegally, and the King's Baton arrives in Gibraltar as part of the build-up to the Commonwealth Games. We'll be back in a few minutes. You're watching GBC News. Extra personnel will be deployed to key areas of the nature reserve to ensure macaques are not fed illegally. This follows the publication of a recent paper published in Scientific Reports, which served to highlight the biological impacts of illegal feeding and reinforced the need to curtail it.
The government highlights the work it's done to improve the management of the Rock's Barbary macaques, including legislation regarding interference and feeding. It claims there's still a minority who chooses to ignore guidance and the law and touch, tease or feed them, despite it being well known that this is detrimental to the monkeys. Number 6 believes balancing the conservation needs of the nature reserve with visitor pressure and illegal feeding remains a challenge, with research continuing apace and new projects being announced this spring. The macaques, it says, are fed twice daily by a dedicated team of experienced keepers and conservation assistants. Additionally, it says, they feed on a range of wild plants within the habitat on the Upper Rock. The government claims that the past 15 years have seen improvements in the resources and facilities available. Aside from the provisioning of food, it says, a network of purpose-built freshwater ponds were built in the nature reserve. Now, new foraging areas will be created by clearing dense undergrowth after the bird nesting season. This will also favour other species in the reserve aside from the Barbary macaque. In addition to a range of conservation measures, the Department of the Environment says that together with the Tourist Board, it will be engaging all stakeholders to ensure the government's objectives are aligned for the benefit of the macaques and the nature reserve visitor experience.
The Jabanco Group will once again be the title sponsor of this year's Literary Festival. Cultural Services has also confirmed the John Mackintosh Educational Trust will return as a principal partner, supporting the Schools and Children's programme as well as other initiatives during the festival week. With 14 speakers already announced, Literary Festival Director Seamus Byrne spoke to Kellyanne Borge, highlighting the variety of different themes and the popular schools programme.
We've got a great team who's responsible for that in terms of Davina Barbara and Tasmin Griffith. They're doing amazing work. This year you've already seen maybe through your press that we've made also not only having the Christopher Lloyd topics, but we're also having 2 authors coming from the Carnegie Awards. We made a partnership with the Carnegie Awards and there themselves we have a writer and an illustrator. The winners will be announced in June. And then we will know who will be the 2 authors joining us. So the Carnegie Awards will be also important for that. Then we will be involving the Phillinson family again. I think it's important that their story and the Gorham's Cave complex story is also told in schools and to young people. And then when you look at other subjects as well, we're going to be talking about minority languages. We're supporting GADS with a dementia talk. Talking about mental health, we've got 2 events with Duxworth. We're talking about ADHD, current affairs like smartphone age, biography, memoirs, art, environment, climate change. We have Margaret Thatcher's, a theme on Margaret Thatcher. And we also have, which I can confirm already, is Alison Larkin, She will be coming because it was part of the Gibraltar-Oxford lecture recently, which was hosted by Minister Santos. We're trying to bring a celebrity in terms of gastronomy. We're working with Father Charlie on a possible author. We're working on a poetry slam as well for young people and students with Jonathan Touma and Basin and Westside Schools, year 7 and 8 students. And what I want to do this year as well is go even a step further, because when you look at the work done in Hay Festival or Cheltenham or many other international festivals, there are many fringe events. So I'm on the verge of speaking to MAG to invite them to do an open mic, fine arts with Callarte, kitchen studios, Janito workshops, working with the Heritage Trust, with GONHS, who have published many books on birds and flowers, and try to do some walking trails. And the program is exciting.
The Commonwealth Games are taking place this summer in Glasgow. The King's Baton landed on the Rock today for the next stage of the traditional pre-Games Baton Relay. The baton was unveiled at the Mayor's Parlour this evening. Our reporter Jose Mari Ruiz was there.
The Commonwealth Games is entering its final stages now as we edge ever closer to the competition. It's happening in Glasgow this July, so just a few months away now. And today was Gibraltar's turn to unveil their King's Baton. I say theirs because normally, traditionally, the King's Baton arrives with a message from King Charles III, but this time around, for the first time ever, every nation was given a blank one to make their own. Ours was designed by local street artist Jupe and was unveiled here at the Mayor's Parlour tonight for the very first time. Now, it's got a very busy schedule. The relay is happening tomorrow morning, starting at the convent, well, making its way from the convent to Casemate Square, and then there'll be photo opportunities throughout the afternoon before it hits the middle schools on Monday and Tuesday, so a very busy schedule. I'm now joined by Gibraltar's chef de mission, Chris Walker. Chris, here's the baton in all of its glory.
Here it is, yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, the baton is, we received it just plain Scottish ash wood, and we've had our local artist has put the design on, which we're absolutely delighted with. And yes, this baton will travel to Glasgow, and it will join 73 other batons in Glasgow, where King Charles III will formally open the Games.
What do you think it means for the opportunity for nations to have a blank baton for the first time ever? What does that mean?
Well, I think it gives each Commonwealth nation the opportunity to design the baton as they see fit and represents their country or their territory, rather than having one baton that travels the Commonwealth. So I think it's a fantastic initiative, and one that we're very keen to be a part of.
Tell us a little bit about the design, because we see some iconic and traditional things, like of course the rock, the orcas, and the other side we've got the apes, but in particular here in memory of Sam O'Shea. And how wonderful is that?
Yes, I'm personally absolutely delighted that we've got an image of Sam, which even has his race number 54 on it. You know, Sam was a Commonwealth Games cyclist. He competed in the last Commonwealth Games in 2023 in Birmingham, and it's only fitting that we can remember Sam, as he was tragically killed in an accident when he was training in France last year. And Sam will travel with the baton, obviously, all the way to Glasgow, and you know, I couldn't be more proud to have him on the baton.
Extremely touching to have his parents here as well to be able to see the unveiling.
Yes, absolutely. Paul and Andrew have made the trip over, and I'm delighted that they're here to see us unveil the baton.
Chris, I always wonder, because you're were such a top athlete, when you get to the Commonwealth Games, do you still have that little bit of an itch?
No, not now. I'm definitely well past it.
I saw you running just the other day.
Yes, but nowhere near the level that it needs to be at. I've had a fantastic experiences in the Commonwealth Games, and now it's my turn to help those athletes and those younger athletes have the same great experiences that I had.
To pass the baton on.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
The words of Gibraltar's chef de mission, Chris Walker, here tonight as the baton, the King's Baton, Gibraltar's King's Baton, was unveiled for the first time at the Mayor's Parlour.
And keeping it sporty, futsal playoffs and European squash feature in our sports roundup. Robin Shepherd-Capurro has the latest.
It is the climax of the domestic futsal season, a clash of the Titans tomorrow as Europa and Lynx go head-to-head in the first of a best-of-3 playoff final to determine who will go to next season's Champions League qualifiers. Europa Point, the place to be. Also happening at Europa Point, a big few days of squash. 50 visiting players from the likes of Germany and France, the UK and Turkey, all here for the European Masters. High-level stuff guaranteed. Starts today, finals on Sunday. And early May can only mean one thing, the Gibraltar International Half Marathon. Campion Park, the place to be, bright and early on Sunday morning, 8:30 start, 21.1 kilometres. Still time to register, by the way. You can do so online. Last year, Ben Reeves and Kim Baglietto won it. Can they repeat the feat?
Let's hope the weather doesn't scupper their plans. Well, that's all from the GBC News team for now. We leave you with images from the Gibraltar frontier, where transformation works continue ahead of the treaty's implementation and the removal of the border fence. Overnight, more changes took place on site, with the removal of the X-ray vehicle screening system and the Bureau de Change. Have a great evening.